Hello and welcome to the most popular commanders of April, and we are starting with some new ones because the Ur-Dragon is out, and otherwise we would have gotten it every time, so we are skipping it after we have done a deck about it, of course, so many other could follow that get a deck of their own. But today we have new dragons because Tarkir is in, and I think it's just in time that we have banned the Ur-Dragon, but enough about him. I've talked too much about him. This guy, the balance skill, is way more interesting already because we have seen so much of the Ur-Dragon, and I think most interesting is the fact that it's just a mill guy and really there's not too much. But whenever he attacks, you mill some cards. Whenever some cards leave your graveyard, you create 2/2s. Also, when he attacks, you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So he ramps for himself. That could be strong in some, that's really strong for a commander, because then you only need one more land aside from Teval to be able to cast him again. So that, in a sense, goes slowly infinite. So this deck is definitely a synergy deck that's all about that Sultai value, and of course it's kind of mirroring those Insidious Roots standard decks, so people do know what is strong about this kind of commander now and know that this must be a fun thing to do in Commander 2. Next up, not from Tarkir, is one bit of a wild card, I would say. Well, it is from Marvel, and Marvel stuff has been very popular before, so I think we will see more and more of this. So it's from a meme set, and it's the only new card from it. Otherwise it was just jokes and tomfoolery, but this one actually has a very interesting mechanic on it that makes it very popular. And yes, there's a secret lair again that is in the top 2 most popular cards, commanders actually. So what's interesting about this, well, that you can exchange his text box with that of another creature, and then your opponents will have a creature that just says at the beginning of your upkeep you lose 3 life, so they don't want that. But they can, for 3 mana, sacrifice the creature so that each other player draws a card. So they don't even draw a card themselves, they just strengthen you. So basically the first time you cast this, for 4 mana you give your opponents something that just damages them and gives you a card eventually. But also, I think what is fun is the fact that you can steal a card box from your opponents. So that could actually be strong. This also works very well with copy shenanigans, but there isn't much in Rakdos itself, so you will need the colorless good stuff. Next up is Edgar Markov, who has been here for some time, and if you don't know, every time someone returns, or a commander card does, they get something new. So in this case, it's Edgar Markov's turn to get a character for Dungeons & Dragons. And what I think Edgar Markov needs is a lot of charisma. He actually is very strong in the sense that he can put his family under his thumb and really make sure that everyone follows him. So I've given him 22 charisma, so that he does have that social dominance aspect. I think he needs a lot of dexterity for being a vampire, and he needs to be hard to hit as well. Then some strong saves, because he should be very good against magic and control, and only the best will be able to control him, which has happened. And then of course he will be very tanky because he is still a knight. And then the key traits that really define the character, I think it should be an optional boss to fight, because most of these characters aren't really the end boss in most stories, unless you're a vampire from his family, maybe a planeswalker or something. But his most unique traits are, I think, the option to summon vampire minions every turn. They should be relatively weak, but they should be quick, because they have haste, of course. Then I think some aura charms for nearby enemies that weaken them whenever they get too close, so they will need to roll for wisdom to be able to stop this. Then some elite spellcaster abilities to dominate others and have some fabric touch, for example, maybe some mass suggestion sprinkled in there. Then he has a great sword, of course, we see it in the art as well, that should drain some HP and lowers the max HP of your opponents. He should be a legendary commander, of course. I think maybe most commanders do. So he controls minions and the battlefield with legendary actions. And he has some lair synergy. So when you get into his lair, which I think is the place where you will meet him, there are some places there that will be unique. So outside there will be the Blood Vineyard, where many vampires patrol and make sure that you aren't safe even before entering the castle. Then there will be the Hall of Ancestry, where you can find out more about his parents maybe and stuff like that. So that must be fun. He still keeps these halls, but they aren't used very much. So this is really a place where you can find lore and maybe some haunted portraits to find enemies against Edgar Markov. Then the Crimson Ballroom, which we have seen in Crimson Vow, where there will be the main combat arena with some blood mist sprinkled in so that your holy attacks will be less powerful. So definitely not the place where you want to battle Edgar. Then the Thrall's Crypt, where he can summon backup from, and it will be really strong, so you need to be quick in defeating Edgar defeat him before he notices you. And then the final chamber will buff Edgar unless the heart of the castle is destroyed itself. So that's it. Next up, a new one. Why is it popular? Zurgo Stormrender is from a precon again, and precons are always going to be popular, but I think people really want to draw cards in Miirym. It is one of their weaknesses. It has black to draw cards and red to do it impulsively, but doing it consistently is really hard. And I think having a commander for cheap that does it is a great way to do it, and you can focus on your synergies. So whenever a creature token you control leaves the battlefield, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, each opponent loses 1 life. So you want to be attacking with them and then have them leave. So that's a little bit harder. You can't just sacrifice them right away. You have to attack with them, and then you have to choose between dealing damage and drawing cards. So this makes it a very interesting Marduk commander, which is maybe new for some people. And I think tokens are just a popular archetype on their own, which is a small thing. And Zurgo has a really interesting story with the timelines, so that adds. Then Miirym returns for the second time, so we will be looking at some good cards with it. And there are a bunch of cards that are good with Miirym, of course, because dragons, all of the dragons. But really good cards with him are Astral Dragon. It is a dragon, but combine it with Cursed Mirror and you get a combo. It is an expensive dragon, 8 mana to play something, but it is a strong one on its own and can, like I said, combo off. So if you have the Cursed Mirror out on the battlefield, which says it enters the battlefield and may become a copy of any creature for the turn, and you play the Astral Dragon, it enters, and then you create 2 tokens of target non-creature permanent, so you can copy the Cursed Mirror twice, and they are 3/3s, and you can have them enter as a copy of the Astral Dragon, so that you can then create 2 3/3s that are copies of the Cursed Mirror that you can then have enter as a copy of Astral Dragon. So you see how this repeats itself. Another great card, just a big dragon as well maybe, but it's Terror of the Peaks, that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. And of course Astral Dragon and Cursed Mirror themselves didn't really win the game yet, because you still had to attack with them. But if you have Terror of the Peaks out, this will in fact destroy your opponents. Next up is another combo, Old Gnawbone and Hellkite Charger. The old dragons from the Dungeons & Dragons set are really expensive, but that is the case for most dragons. And still it is so popular, I really wonder why. Or if even these people are really building those decks. Let me know if you have one, because I'm actually curious. But Old Gnawbone, really expensive in real life money, and really expensive in mana as well. But says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. So you can see why it is kind of busted. But Hellkite Charger goes infinite with it. It has flying and haste, so it can attack immediately. It's 6 mana, so it's a really expensive combination, but most dragons are really expensive. And it says whenever it attacks, you may pay 7 mana, and if you do, untap all attacking features, and after this phase there's an additional combat phase. So if you can deal 7 damage with, for example, old Gnawbone, then you will have enough mana to again attack again. So if you can do this once, you can do this as many times as you want, and you will have infinite combat steps. You do need to make sure that you can get in every time, of course. And cards that are great as well in this deck are cards like Dragon Tempest, because it works really well with dragons, and again says whenever a dragon you control, you deal some damage to any target, and that will be your opponents, and then you will win the game with your other combinations and big dragons. Next up is a bit of a weird one, because Gala has returned a bunch of times too. Even has risen. I think it's the only card that has risen as a card that, or commander that has already been in the top 10 this time. But we made we had AI made a weapon design for her, and I think it's really cool. So what you are seeing here is a sort of combination of her staff and the sword, and the sword has been sort of warped, so it still doesn't work perfectly. But I think it really shows how she is just an angry little angel, and basically that's it. But it's very metal, and it's made out of metal, I hope. Or maybe stone, should be more logical, because of her magic powers, of course. Then we have Hasheton, the Scarab's Fist, which has returned for the 3rd time, and we will look at his art a little bit more. Made by Wisnu Tan, actual artist. And I think what's amazing about this art, and her art every time, is that it just shows you so much from looking at the card itself. If you look at the close-up of the art, you might not immediately see too much that interests you. But if you look at this on a card, well, if you look at any art on a card, it's really hard to show you a bunch of things, because the art will be really small and you will be looking at the mechanics. But I feel like this art really shows us what this guy is about. Even if we don't think about the Scarab God or stuff like that, it already shows us a really buff zombie dude, and we are looking at something that really inspires mystery in our hearts, because we wonder what's behind the mask. Because what is it actually? Is it a scarab? Is it the sort of snake? We don't really know. It has weird teeth, so we are really wondering what this is about. But it's buff, so why is it a snake? Couldn't be. What is it exactly? Is it a beetle itself? We don't know. So that's one thing that's interesting. But maybe it could be a lion. Because when we look at the staff this guy is wearing, we see a lion on it. But a lion, if you know the lore a little bit, should be more aligned with Oketra, not with the Scarab God. So what is the history here? There are so many questions that we need to have answered, that I think this is really interesting art on that point, but it already was when we were just looking at it. Even if we look at it from a bit of a distance. I mean, look at the card like this. There's already so much that you see and immediately springs out. And I think one other interesting thing that many Magic cards struggle to do is convey very well the colors of the card. What you need to think about here is that it's white and black, and when we look at it we think, huh? But there's so much blue in it. Of course it's an Eternal, so that's maybe a choice made for it, but it's a shining blue armor, and not all the Eternal armors shine like this. So we are forced to see that it is very blue. And then you think about, oh, it's a blue commander, because it has a blue ability on it. And you need to think about it. It's a bit of a difficult process or concept for many new players. But I think the blue in the art really helps us see that it is also a blue card. So there are so many smart things about this, and a very deep process. And I'm actually kind of glad that it came after the AI part, because it made me kind of think about not using AI for these anymore. Maybe have someone make the art or something like that. Because there are so many things that someone had to think about, and that's actually a beautiful thing. But let me know what you think. Next up is just new commanders from here on out, by the way. So why is it popular? The Kotis the Fangkeeper. Well, one thing is that it is a really cool flavor. It's a new sort of leader of the soul type, but in such a different manner as what we have seen before. The soul type aren't really that evil group of people anymore. There are still evil people in there, but there are also nice people in there, and we are forced to see that part as well. It's the only non-precon Tarkir card, so it must be really interesting. So let's look at it. 4 mana for an indestructible small guy. But it's indestructible, so you don't really care yet. Because whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the amount of damage dealt. So now we're thinking, okay, we need to strengthen Kotis. It needs to have more power so that when it deals combat damage, combat damage to a player, you may cast, or you may exile more cards from their library. But then it also says you may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana costs. So this can really quickly spiral out of control if we have enough Voltron cards. So this is actually a Voltron deck that gets out of hand quickly. And you don't have to go all in on Kotis. Just having it attack with, for example, 4 power or dealing 4 combat damage to a player means that you exile 4 cards and make play any number of spells with mana value 4 or less from among them without paying their mana costs. That means you probably get 2 cards that you can easily play. Maybe it's just ramp in that case, but that really spirals out of control quickly. So this is, I think, why it is such an interesting commander. Then we have Ureni of the Unwritten, which is a really cool commander which is, I think, the only one that has featured in one of the Tarkir stories. It's a really big one, 7 mana, and it's again a dragon commander. I think the only reason why it is not higher up in the list is because it's contending with the Ur-Dragon and Miirym. Again about the Ur-Dragon, we should stop with that. It's a 7 mana 7/7, so it is actually one of those Elder Dragon cards that could defeat your opponents in just hitting them thrice. So 3 times. But also says whenever Chi enters or attacks, look at the top 8 cards of your library. So 8 cards, and you may put a dragon card from among them onto the battlefield. So you may play a dragon for free, and that means that you can play a very big card for free. So couldn't be the old dragon, but could really be a big other commander that you can play right then. So a little bit of scrying maybe in this deck, but mostly what you want to do is ramp out quickly, get Ureni out and attack, because having this ability played should already be enough to win the game. But other than that, it's not the strongest you can choose, honestly. Last, honestly least, is Felothar the Steadfast, the Absent commander that cares about walls. The most redeeming factor for this is that it's just the evolution of Siege Rhino. Let me explain. Well, it's just because it's riding on a big beast and sort of joins a house or a throne, which is sort of a house when you think about it. Didn't really think that through. But people, I think, like walls, and the fact that this is in a precon really makes it popular, I think. And it's just a bunch of card draw, because for 3 mana you can sacrifice another creature and draw cards equal to its toughness, then discard equal to its power. So you could also discard some cards that you want in the graveyard to recur it. So it will be a little bit of a recursion deck as well. Maybe a bit of a discard deck, but mostly you want to play big walls and make sure that you deal a bunch of damage with their toughness rather than their power. Many cards that do this already. So I think it's just the newness of the commander. And that was it for this video. Let me know what your favorite new commander is. And with that, I want to thank you for watching. Bye.